In the deep silence before the world's first dawn, when stars alone held vigil over the unformed earth, there was a question that trembled in the heart of creation. What does it mean to stand against the shadow when all light seems lost? This is not a question answered in the clashing of swords or the thunder of hooves, but in the quiet places, in the trembling of a single soul, in the weight of a choice made when no eyes see. In the tales of Middle-earth woven by the hand of J.R.R. Tolkien, we find this question echoing through the ages, from the great halls of kings to the humble hearths of those who dwell in shadow. And nowhere does it sing more clearly than in the story of Lake Town, a fragile cluster of wooden homes perched upon the long lake beneath the gaze of a dragon whose fire could unmake the world. Why could Smaug, with all his wrath and ruin, not crush the spirit of Lake Town? To answer, we must walk the paths of myth, where symbols breathe and stories become the mirror of the soul. Let us begin in the mists of time, when the world was young and the fires of creation still glowed faintly in the deep places. The tale of Lake Town is not merely a chapter in the history of Middle-earth. It is a parable of the human heart, a meditation on what it means to endure when the weight of fear presses down like a mountain. Smaug, the great dragon of Erebor, is no mere beast. He is a force of annihilation, a living furnace of greed and pride, whose wings cast a shadow that chills the soul before the body ever feels his flame. His scales are impervious, his eyes piercing his voice, a serpent's hiss that coils around the mind. To the people of Lake Town, he is not just a threat, but a presence, an ever-looming terror that haunts their dreams and lingers in the silence between their words. Yet this dragon, for all his might, is not the true adversary. The true adversary is the fear he awakens, the doubt that gnaws at the roots of courage, the temptation to bow before despair and call it wisdom. Lake Town, or Esgaroth, as it was named in the tongue of old, stands upon stilts above the waters of the Long Lake, a city of men built not for glory, but for survival. Its people are not the high-born of Gondor or the wise elves of Rivendell. They are fishermen, traders, craftsmen, ordinary folk whose lives are measured in the mending of nets and the bartering of goods. Their homes are of timber weathered by wind and water, and their wealth is modest, a far cry from the golden hoards of Erebor. Yet there is a resilience in their simplicity, a quiet strength that flows like the lake beneath their feet. To understand why Smaug could not crush their spirit, we must first see Lake Town not as a place, but as a symbol, a fragile vessel of hope afloat on the tides of fate. In the heart of this tale stands Bard the Bowman, a man whose name would one day be sung in halls far beyond the shores of the Long Lake. But in the shadow of Smaug, he is no hero crowned with prophecy. He is a descendant of kings, yes, but his lineage is a faded memory, a whisper of a time when his forefathers ruled in Dale before the dragon came. Bard is a man of duty, a captain of archers, a father, a protector of his people. His hands are calloused, his eyes weary, yet there is a fire in him that no shadow can quench. He is the heir, not of a throne, but of a burden, the burden of memory, of hope, of a promise that the light can return even when the night seems endless. The story begins not with the roar of a dragon, but with a silence. It is the silence of a town that has learned to live with fear, to carry it like a weight upon the shoulders. For years, Smaug has slumbered in the halls of Erebor, his presence a distant but ever-present threat. The people of Lake Town speak of him in hushed tones, as if to name him too loudly might summon his wrath. They tell tales of his coming when fire rained from the sky and the city of Dale was reduced to ash. They speak of the survivors who fled to the lake building Esgaroth from the wreckage of their hopes. And they speak of the treasure, the mountain of gold and jewels that lies beneath the dragon's coils, a fortune that could rebuild their world but remains forever out of reach. This silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is the silence of a people who have learned to temper their dreams to live within the boundaries of what is possible. It is the silence of a mother who tells her child to hush when they ask why the mountain smokes. It is the silence of a fisherman who casts his nets and prays the winds do not carry the scent of sulphur. It is the silence of a town that has made peace with its fear, not because it is weak, but because it must endure. And yet, within this silence, there is a pulse, a faint but steady rhythm of defiance, of faith, of a hope that refuses to die. Into this silence comes a disturbance, a ripple upon the lake that heralds the turning of the tide. Far from Esgaroth, in the lands beyond the misty mountains, a company of dwarves led by Thorin Oakenshield sets out to reclaim the lonely mountain. With them is Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit of the Shire, small in stature but great in courage. Their quest is one of restoration, to take back what was stolen, to drive the dragon from his lair, to see the halls of Erebor filled once more with light and song. But their journey is not merely a matter of gold or glory. It is a challenge to the shadow, a refusal to let fear have the final word. And though the people of Lake Town know nothing of this company, their fates are bound together as all fates are in the great tapestry of Middle-earth. The arrival of Thorin and his companions in Esgaroth is like a stone cast into still waters. The town stirs its silence, broken by whispers of hope and dread. The master of Lake Town, a man of cunning and ambition, sees in the dwarves a chance for profit, a way to secure his own power. He welcomes them with feigned warmth, offering supplies and boats. But his heart is cold, his thoughts bent on gold. The people, however, see something else. They see the heirs of Durin, the line of kings who once brought prosperity to Dale. They see a spark, a possibility that the dragon might be challenged, that the shadow might be lifted. And yet with this hope comes fear, for to challenge Smaug is to invite his wrath, and Lake Town lies within the reach of his fire. Bard alone among the townsfolk senses the weight of what is to come. He does not trust the master's greed, nor does he fully believe in the dwarves' quest. He knows the stories of Smaug's coming passed down from his father and his father's father. He knows the cost of defying a dragon. Yet he cannot turn away. There is a restlessness in him, a call that stirs in his blood. It is the call of his ancestors, the kings of Dale who stood against the shadow and fell. It is the call of duty to protect his people, to shield them from the fire that looms on the horizon. And it is the call of something deeper, something unspoken, a faith that even in the darkest hour there is a purpose to the struggle, a meaning to the stand. As the dwarves prepare to depart for the lonely mountain, Bard watches from the edge of the lake, his bow in hand, his heart heavy with foreboding. The waters reflect the sky, a canvas of grey and gold, and for a moment he sees not the lake, but the world, as it might be a world where the dragon is gone, where the mountain sings with life, where his children can grow without fear. But the vision fades, and the silence returns heavier now, for it carries the weight of what must be done. The dwarves will go to Erebor, and Smaug will wake, and Lake Town will stand in the path of his fury. This is the truth, that Bard carries the burden that sets him apart. Let us pause here, not to break the tale, but to linger in its depths. The story of Lake Town is not a tale of triumph in the way we often imagine it. It is not the clash of armies or the crowning of kings. It is a tale of endurance, of the small acts that hold the world together when the great powers falter. To stand against Smaug is not merely to face a dragon, but to face the shadow within, to confront the fear that whispers of surrender, the temptation to flee, the doubt that says the fight is futile. And yet the people of Lake Town do not flee. They remain, they endure, they hold fast to the fragile hope that tomorrow might be different. Consider the lake itself a mirror of the sky, a boundary between the world above and the world below. In the myths of Middle-earth water is a symbol of life, of renewal, of the quiet strength that flows beneath the surface. The lake is the foundation of Esgaroth, the source of its livelihood, the shield that keeps it from the dragon's fire. But it is also a reminder of its fragility, for water can bear a town, but it cannot hold back a storm. The lake is the heart of Lake Town's spirit, a reflection of its people's resilience and their vulnerability. They are not warriors, not heroes in the mould of legend, but they are steadfast, and in their steadfastness lies a power that even Smaug cannot break. And what of Smaug himself? He is not merely a creature of flesh and flame, but a symbol of the forces that seek to unmake the world. He is greed hoarding wealth he cannot use, guarding a treasure that brings no joy. He is pride believing himself invincible, untouchable by the hands of men. He is fear casting a shadow that paralyzes the heart. Yet for all his might, Smaug is alone. His lair is a tomb, his treasure a chain, his power a prison. He is the shadow that looms over Lake Town, but he is also a mirror reflecting the temptations that lurk within every soul, the desire to take, to dominate, to destroy, rather than to build. In the silence of Lake Town, we hear the echo of a greater truth, that the battle against the shadow is not won by strength alone, but by the courage to stand, to hope, to believe in the light, even when it cannot be seen. This is the truth that Bard carries, though he does not yet know its name. It is the truth that flows through the lake, that binds the people of Esgaroth, that holds them fast when the fire comes. And it is the truth that will carry us forward into the heart of the storm, where the dragon wakes and the world trembles. The dwarves depart their boats, cutting through the waters of the long lake, their eyes fixed on the lonely mountain. Lake Town watches them go. Its silence now, a living thing heavy with anticipation and dread. Bard stands at the edge of the quay, his bow at his side, his heart a crucible of hope and fear. He does not know what lies ahead, but he knows this: the shadow is stirring, and the time for silence is ending. The tale of Lake Town is about to become a song of fire and courage, a hymn to the unbreakable spirit of those who stand when all seems lost. And so we journey on, not to the clash of blades or the roar of flame, but to the deeper battle, the battle within, where fear and faith contend, where the soul chooses its path, where the spirit of Lake Town rises to meet its destiny. For though Smaug's fire may burn, it cannot consume the heart that refuses to yield. This is the mystery we seek, the question that lingers in the silence. Why could Smaug not crush the spirit of Lake Town? To find the answer, we must follow the tale through the shadow and into the light. The boats of Thorin Oakenshield and his company fade into the mist that clings to the long lake, their oars cutting silent ripples through the water's glassy surface. Lake Town stands still, as if holding its breath, the wooden planks of its homes creaking faintly under the weight of a gathering storm. The silence that once cloaked Esgaroth in uneasy peace now hums with a restless energy, a tension that binds the heart of every man, woman and child. The dwarves have gone to the lonely mountain, to the lair of Smaug, and though none speak it aloud, all know the truth: the dragon will wake, and his wrath will turn upon the lake. Yet in this moment, as the world teeters on the edge of fire, the spirit of Lake Town does not falter. It bends, it trembles, but it does not break. Why? To seek the answer, we must descend deeper into the myth, where the shadows cast by fear and temptation reveal the light of an enduring hope. The tale now turns not to the mountain where Bilbo Baggins treads softly in the halls of Erebor, nor to the dragon stirring in his golden bed, but to the heart of Esgaroth itself, to the people who dwell in the shadow of the dragon's wrath. They are not a people of legend, not carved from the stone of epic song. They are ordinary, their lives woven from the small threads of daily toil, the mending of nets, the carving of wood, the laughter of children chasing one another across the narrow bridges. Yet in their ordinariness lies a mystery, a strength that defies the fire of Smaug. For it is not in the great deeds of heroes alone that the world is held together, but in the quiet choices of those who carry on when hope seems a fragile thing. In the days that follow the dwarves' departure, Lake Town becomes a crucible, a place where fear and courage are forged in the same fire. The master of Lake Town, with his silken robes and honeyed words, seeks to quell the rising unease. He gathers the townsfolk in the great hall, a cavernous chamber of weathered beams and flickering torches, and speaks of prosperity, of the wealth that will flow from Erebor if the dwarves succeed. His voice is smooth, his promise is bright, but his eyes betray a flicker of doubt, a calculation that weighs the lives of his people against the gold he craves. The master is no villain in the mould of Sauron or Morgoth. He is a man flawed and frail, seduced by the same temptation that lies at the heart of Smaug's hoard, the lure of power, of security, of a world where fear can be bought away. The people listen, but their hearts are not swayed by the master's words. They know the cost of greed, for they have lived in the shadow of the dragon's hoard all their lives. The treasure of Erebor is a curse as much as a prize, a magnet for ruin that drew Smaug to the mountain long ago. To the fishermen and traders of Esgaroth, gold is not a dream, but a danger, a flame that burns those who draw too near. And yet they do not reject the hope that the dwarves' quest kindles. They dare to imagine a world without the dragon, a world where their children can sleep without the fear of fire. This hope is not loud or bold. It is a quiet thing, an ember glowing in the dark, sustained by the small acts of faith that bind the town together. Among these acts stands Bard the Bowman, whose presence is a steady anchor in the rising tide of fear. He moves through Lake Town with purpose, checking the town's defences, inspecting the bows and arrows stored in the armory, speaking words of calm to those whose eyes are wide with dread. He does not promise victory, for he knows the power of Smaug. He does not speak of glory, for he seeks none. But he speaks of duty, of the need to stand together to protect what is precious. His voice is low, his words plain, yet they carry a weight that the master's grand speeches cannot match. For Bard is one of them, a man of the lake whose life is bound to theirs by shared hardship and shared hope. In the evenings, when the sun dips below the horizon and the lake mirrors the first stars, Bard gathers his family in their small home. His children, Bane, Sigrid and Tilda, sit close, their faces lit by the flicker of a single candle. They ask him questions. Will the dragon come? Can the dwarves kill him? Will Lake Town be safe? And Bard answers as best he can, with honesty tempered by love. He tells them stories of their ancestors, the Lords of Dale, who built a city of bells and laughter before the dragon came. He speaks of Girion, his forefather, who stood against Smaug and fell, yet whose courage lives on in the black arrow that Bard now keeps a relic of a lost age. And he speaks of the lake, the lifeblood of Esgaroth, which has borne their people through flood and famine and will bear them still. These moments, small and fleeting, are the heart of Lake Town's spirit. They are the threads that weave the town's resilience, the quiet rituals that hold fear at bay. For every family in Esgaroth has its own version of this scene, mothers singing lullabies, fathers mending nets by firelight, neighbours sharing bread and stories. These are not the acts of heroes, but of human beings who choose to live, to love, to hope, even when the shadow looms large. And in this choice lies a power that Smaug, for all his fire and fury, cannot comprehend. But the shadow is not idle. Far to the north, in the halls of Erebor, the dragon stirs. Bilbo Baggins, with his hobbit's courage and cunning, has crept into the treasure chamber and taken a single cup, a small act that ripples through the mountain like a stone dropped in a still pool. Smaug wakes, his eyes blazing, his rage a furnace that shakes the earth. He senses the theft, the intrusion, the challenge to his dominion. And though he does not yet know of Lake Town's role, his wrath turns toward the lake, for he smells the scent of men upon the wind, the faint trace of those who dare to dream of his defeat. In Esgaroth, the first sign of the dragon's awakening is not fire, but a tremor, a deep, resonant hum that rises from the mountain and rolls across the lake. The waters tremble, the stilts of the town groan, and a chill settles over the heart of every soul. The silence that once held Lake Town is shattered, replaced by a low, pervasive dread. The children grow quiet. The fishermen pause in their work. The torches flicker as if caught in a sudden wind. And then, faintly at first, comes the sound of wings, great leathery wings beating against the night, a rhythm that grows louder, closer, until it is a thunder that drowns out all else. Bard is among the first to act. He climbs to the highest watchtower, his bow slung across his back, his eyes scanning the northern sky. The stars are blotted out one by one as a vast shadow moves across them. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of sulphur and ash. And then, in a moment that sears itself into the soul of every witness, Smaug appears. His scales gleam like molten gold, his eyes burn like twin furnaces, his wings cast a darkness that swallows the light. He is a vision of terror, a creature of myth made flesh, and his voice, when he speaks, is a serpent's hiss that coils around the heart. Thieves, he roars his words, shaking the timbers of Lake Town. Cowards, you who harbour those who dare to steal from me, I am Smaug the Golden, the chiefest and greatest of calamities. My fire will consume you, my claws will rend you, my wrath will unmake your world. The people of Lake Town cower, their courage tested by the sight of the dragon in his fury. The master flees to his chambers, his promises of prosperity forgotten, his thoughts bent only on survival. The guards falter their spears, trembling in their hands. The children cling to their parents, their cries muffled by the roar of the dragon's voice. And yet even in this moment of terror, the spirit of Lake Town does not break, for though fear grips them, it does not define them. They are a people of the lake, born of water and resilience, and they will not yield. Bard stands alone in the watchtower, his bow in hand, the black arrow notched against the string. He does not flinch as Smaug circles above his fire, licking the edges of the town, setting the outer homes ablaze. He does not waver as the dragon's eyes fix upon him, piercing and cruel, seeking to unravel his resolve. Bard is a man mortal and frail, but in this moment he is more. He is the heir of Girion, the bowman of Dale, the protector of Esgaroth. He is the embodiment of a truth that Smaug cannot comprehend, that the strength of the heart is greater than the strength of fire, that the will to stand is mightier than the power to destroy. The dragon dives, his jaws wide, his fire a torrent that engulfs the lake. The waters boil, the timbers crack, the screams of the people rise like a chorus of despair. But Bard does not move. He draws the black arrow back, his eyes locked on the dragon's form, searching for the flaw in his armor, the weakness that his forefather glimpsed long ago. And in that moment, as the world burns around him, Bard hears a voice not his own, but something older, deeper, a whisper from the heart of the world. It is the voice of a thrush, a small bird perched upon the tower, its song cutting through the chaos like a blade of light. The thrush speaks, and Bard listens. It tells him of the hollow in Smaug's breast, the gap in his scales where a single arrow might pierce his heart. This is no mere chance, no stroke of luck, but a moment woven into the tapestry of fate, a gift from the world that sings in the silence of the stars. Bard raises his bow, his hands steady, his heart clear. He does not think of glory nor of death, but of his children, his people, the lake that has borne them all. And he looses the arrow. The black arrow flies a streak of shadow against the fire, and it finds its mark. Smaug roars his body, twisting his wings, beating wildly as he rises into the sky. The flames falter, the shadow breaks, and the dragon falls, his body crashing into the lake with a sound like the breaking of the world. The waters rise, the town shakes, and for a moment all is chaos. But when the waves subside, Smaug is gone, his fire extinguished, his terror ended. The people of Lake Town emerge from their hiding places, their faces streaked with ash, their eyes wide with disbelief. The dragon is dead, slain by the hand of Bard the Bowman. The town is wounded, its homes charred, its stilts weakened, but it stands. The lake, though churned and darkened, still holds them fast. And in the silence that follows, a new sound rises, not the silence of fear, but the silence of awe, of gratitude, of a hope reborn. Bard descends from the watchtower, his bow still in hand, his heart heavy with the weight of what has been done. He does not seek praise, nor does he claim the title of hero. He moves among his people, helping to douse the fires, to bind the wounded, to comfort the grieving. The master reappears, his voice loud with false courage, claiming credit for the victory, but the people do not listen. They look to Bard, their eyes filled with a quiet trust, a recognition of the man who stood when all seemed lost. But the tale does not end here, for the death of Smaug is not the end of the shadow. The dragon's hoard remains a treasure that calls to the hearts of men and dwarves alike. The lonely mountain looms, its halls now free, but filled with new dangers, greed, pride, the temptation to claim what cannot be held. And beyond the mountain, other shadows stir, forces that watch and wait, drawn by the promise of power. Lake Town has survived the fire, but it must now face the aftermath, the test of what comes after the dragon. In this moment, as the dawn breaks over the long lake, the spirit of Lake Town shines brightest. It is not a spirit of triumph, but of endurance, of the courage to rebuild, to hope, to carry on. The lake reflects the first light, a mirror of the sky, and in its depths we see the truth that Smaug could not crush, that the heart of a people bound by love and faith is stronger than any fire, deeper than any shadow. This is the Song of Esgaroth, a hymn to the unbreakable, a tale that does not end but fades into the light, calling us to follow, to seek the next verse, to find the meaning of the stand against the dark. The dawn breaks over the long lake, its light scattering across waters still clouded with ash and churned by the fall of Smaug. The dragon is dead, his body sunk beneath the waves, his fire extinguished by the black arrow of Bard the Bowman. Lake Town stands wounded but unbroken, its timbers charred, its stilts trembling, yet held fast by the lake that has always been its lifeblood. The air is heavy with the scent of smoke and sorrow, but there is a new sound rising, a murmur of voices, of footsteps, of hands reaching out to rebuild. The people of Esgaroth move through the wreckage, their faces streaked with soot, their eyes alight with a fragile but unyielding hope. The shadow of the dragon has passed, but the tale of Lake Town is far from over. For though Smaug is slain, his legacy lingers not in fire, but in the treasure he guarded, a hoard that calls to the hearts of men and dwarves alike. To understand why the spirit of Lake Town endures, we must follow the tale deeper into the crucible of lost temptation and the quiet courage that holds fast when the world shifts beneath. The morning after Smaug's fall is not a moment of triumph, but of reckoning. The town is a patchwork of ruin homes reduced to smouldering beams, bridges collapsed into the lake nets, and boats lost to the dragon's fire. The people gather in small clusters, salvaging what they can, binding wounds, mourning those who did not survive the night. There is no grand celebration, no crowning of heroes, for the cost of victory is too great. Yet in this grief, there is a strength that binds them, a shared resolve to rise again, to rebuild not for glory, but for the sake of those who will come after. This is the heart of Lake Town's spirit, a resilience woven from the small acts of ordinary souls who choose to endure. Bard moves among his people, his bow set aside, his hands now lifting beams and clearing debris. He is no longer just the bowman, the slayer of Smaug, but something more, a leader, though he does not seek the title. The people look to him not with awe, but with trust, for he is one of them, a man of the lake, whose life has been shaped by the same hardships they know. His children, Bane, Sigrid and Tilda, work beside him, their small hands carrying water, their voices offering comfort to the grieving. In their presence, Bard finds his anchor, a reminder of why he stood against the dragon, why he loosed the arrow that changed the world. It was not for gold or fame, but for them, for the hope of a future where fear does not rule. The master of Lake Town, however, sees a different path. Emerging from his chambers where he hid as Smaug's fire rained down, he seeks to reclaim his authority. His voice is loud, his gestures grand, as he proclaims the dawn of a new era, a time of wealth and power now that the dragon is gone. He speaks of the treasure in Erebor, the mountain of gold that lies unguarded, and his eyes gleam with a hunger that mirrors the dragon's own. The master is a man of cunning, not courage, and his words are a net cast to ensnare the hearts of the weary. He calls for a march to the lonely mountain to claim the hoard as Lake Town's due to secure a future of prosperity. But his promises ring hollow, for they are born of greed, not hope, and the people sense the shadow in his heart. Bard does not challenge the master openly, for he is not a man of pride or ambition. Instead, he listens, his eyes scanning the faces of his people, reading the doubt and longing in their gazes. He knows the danger of the treasure, the curse that clings to it like a miasma. The hoard of Erebor is no mere wealth. It is a temptation, a force that twists the soul as it twisted Smaug, as it now twists the master. Bard remembers the tales of his forefathers, the kings of Dale, who saw the dragon come for gold and paid the price in fire. He knows that to seek the hoard is to invite a new shadow, one that may prove harder to slay than the dragon himself. Yet the call of the treasure is strong, and Lake Town is not immune. The people are weary, their homes broken, their stores depleted. The promise of gold stirs their hearts not with greed, but with the hope of rebuilding, of feeding their children, of restoring what was lost. They are not blind to the master's flaws, but they are human, and the weight of their suffering makes the lure of wealth a heavy thing. Some begin to speak of the mountain of the dwarves who have gone to claim it of the share that Laketown might demand for its part in Smaug's fall. The air grows tense, the unity of the night before fraying at the edges as voices rise in debate. In this moment of division, a new shadow looms not from the sky, but from the north. Word reaches Laketown that Thorin Oakenshield and his company have entered Erebor, that they walk the halls of their fathers, that the treasure is theirs to claim. But with this news comes another Thorin consumed by the same sickness that gripped Smaug, has barred the gates of the mountain, hoarding the gold as his own. He will not share it, not with Laketown, not with the elves of Mirkwood, who also claim a stake. The dwarves are few, but their resolve is iron, and the mountain is a fortress. The hope that Laketown held that the slaying of Smaug would bring a new dawn begins to falter, replaced by the spectre of conflict. Bard receives this news with a heavy heart. He stands at the edge of the lake, the water lapping at his feet, and gazes toward the lonely mountain. Its peak is shrouded in mist, a silent giant that holds both promise and peril. He knows that Thorin's refusal is not merely a matter of gold, but of pride, of a wound that runs deep in the heart of the dwarves. The loss of Erebor was a theft of their legacy, a scar that Thorin carries as keenly as Bard carries the memory of Dale. Yet Bard also knows that pride unchecked becomes a shadow of its own, a force that divides and destroys. The treasure is aflame, and those who draw near risk being consumed. The people of Laketown look to Bard for guidance, their voices a chorus of fear and hope. Some urge him to lead them to the mountain, to demand their share, to secure the future they deserve. Others counsel caution, warning of the dwarves' strength, of the elves who now march from Mirkwood under Thranduil's banner, seeking their own claim. The master seizes the moment, his words sharp and urgent, calling for action, for a show of strength. He paints a vision of Laketown ascendant, a city of wealth and power, no longer a cluster of wooden homes, but a rival to the great cities of old. His rhetoric is seductive, but it carries the same poison that flows from the hoard, a temptation to trade unity for ambition, to sacrifice the spirit of Esgaroth for the illusion of security. Bard does not answer with speeches or promises. Instead, he gathers the elders of Laketown, the fishermen and craftsmen who have known him all his life, and speaks to them plainly. He tells them of the treasure's curse, of the shadow it casts, of the danger of letting greed guide their path. He speaks of their ancestors who built Esgaroth not for wealth but for survival, who chose the lake over the ruins of Dale because it offered life, not gold. And he speaks of the future of the children who will inherit what they build, of the need to hold fast to what makes them a people, their resilience, their compassion, their faith in one another. His words are not grand, but they are true, and they resonate in the hearts of those who hear them. The elders nod, their faces weathered but resolute, and the murmur of the crowd softens. The temptation of the hoard remains, but Bard's voice is a reminder of who they are, of the lake that has borne them through fire and flood. Yet the master is not swayed. He sees Bard's influence as a threat, a challenge to his authority, and his ambition hardens into resolve. He declares that Laketown will march to Erebor not to beg, but to demand, and he calls for volunteers to form a company under his banner. The town divides not in anger, but in sorrow. Some follow the master, drawn by the promise of gold or the fear of being left behind. Others stand with Bard, their trust in him outweighing the lure of wealth. The lake, ever a mirror of the sky, reflects the fractured light of this moment, a people caught between hope and temptation, between the past and the future. Bard does not condemn those who choose the master's path, for he knows the weight of their suffering, the desperation that drives them. But he knows too that the true battle is not for gold, but for the soul of Laketown, for the spirit that Smaug could not crush. As the master prepares his company, a new force enters the tale. From the west come the elves of Mirkwood, led by Thranduil, their king, and Legolas, his son. Their banners are of silver and green, their armor gleams in the pale light, and their presence is a song of ancient grace. They come not for Lake Town, but for Erebor, for the gems of Thranduil's house that lie within the hoard. Yet their path brings them to the lake, and their arrival shifts the balance of the moment. Thranduil is no friend to men, his heart hardened by centuries of loss, but he sees in Lake Town a people who have suffered as his own have suffered. He offers aid, food supplies, healers to help Esgaroth rebuild, but his aid comes with a price: an alliance against Thorin, a shared march to the mountain. Bard meets Thranduil on the shores of the lake, their conversation a dance of caution and respect. The Elf King is proud, his words sharp, but there is a sorrow in his eyes that Bard recognizes: a grief for what has been lost, a longing for what might be restored. Bard does not trust Thranduil's motives, for the elves are driven by their own desires, but he sees in their offer a chance to save his people. He agrees to parley, not to join the march to war, but to seek a path that avoids bloodshed. The Master, however, sees only opportunity, aligning himself with Thranduil to bolster his own claim, his ambition blinding him to the cost. The lake grows restless, its waters stirred by the winds that carry the scent of coming conflict. Lake Town is no longer just a town, but a pivot in the fate of the North, a fragile heart caught between the pride of dwarves, the ambition of elves, and the greed of men. Bard stands at the center, his heart heavy with the weight of what must be done. He does not want war, for he knows its price. He does not want gold, for he knows its curse. He wants only to protect his people, to preserve the spirit that has carried them through fire and shadow. But the path to that preservation is narrow, and the shadows are gathering. In the nights that follow, Bard dreams of the lake, not as it is, but as it might be. He sees a city rebuilt not of gold, but of wood and water, its homes filled with laughter, its bridges strong. He sees his children grown their lives unshadowed by fear. But he sees too the mountain, its gates barred, its treasure, a flame that draws all to ruin. The dreams are not prophecies, but questions, echoes of the choice that lies before him: to stand with his people, to seek peace, to resist the temptation that threatens to undo all they have fought for. The people of Lake Town too feel the weight of this moment. They gather in small groups, sharing stories of the dragon's fall, of Bard's arrow of the lake that held them fast. They speak of their ancestors who fled Dale and built Esgaroth from nothing. They speak of their children who will inherit the world they shape. And in these stories they find strength, a reminder of who they are. They are not a people of war or wealth, but of endurance, of the quiet courage that builds homes and mends nets, that sings lullabies in the dark. This is the spirit that Smaug could not crush, the light that shines even now as the shadow of the hoard looms large. As the armies of men and elves prepare to march, Bard makes his choice. He will go to Erebor not to fight, but to speak, to seek a way to break the cycle of greed and pride. He takes with him a small company, not warriors, but fishermen, craftsmen, those who know the heart of Lake Town. They carry no banners, no swords, only the hope that truth can pierce the shadow. The lake watches them go, its waters still, its surface a mirror of the sky. And in its depths the spirit of Esgaroth endures a song that does not end, but carries forward into the heart of the mountain where the next verse awaits. The winds that sweep across the long lake carry the scent of ash and the faint clamour of distant preparations as the people of Lake Town stand at the threshold of a new trial. The dragon is dead, his fire quenched by Bard's black arrow, but the shadow he cast lingers not in the sky, but in the hearts of those drawn to the treasure of Erebor. The lonely mountain looms, its gates barred by Thorin Oakenshield, whose pride has turned the hoard into a chain. The elves of Mirkwood, led by Thranduil, march with their silver banners, their eyes fixed on the gems of their house. The master of Lake Town, his ambition cloaked in promises of prosperity, rallies a company to claim a share of the gold. And at the heart of this gathering storm stands Bard the Bowman, who seeks not wealth or war, but a path to preserve the spirit of his people. The lake, ever a mirror of the sky, reflects the fractured light of this moment, its waters trembling with the weight of what is to come. To understand why Smaug could not crush the spirit of Lake Town, we must follow Bard and his small company to the mountain where the true battle for hope, for unity, for the soul of the North is waged not with swords, but with words and choices. Bard leads his company northward, a band of fishermen, craftsmen and elders, their faces weathered by the lake's winds, their hands calloused from years of toil. They carry no armor, no banners, only the tools of their trades, and the quiet resolve that has always defined Esgaroth. The path to Erebor is a winding one through the desolate lands where Dale once stood, its ruins a silent testament to the dragon's wrath. The stones are blackened, the air heavy with the memory of fire, yet there are signs of life, small flowers pushing through the cracks, birds singing in the dawn. These are reminders faint but clear, that even in the shadow of ruin, the world endures, and so do those who walk its paths. As they near the mountain, the air grows colder, the ground harder, the weight of Erebor's presence pressing against their hearts. The lonely mountain is no mere peak, but a symbol, a fortress of memory, a vault of dreams, a crucible where the fates of men, dwarves and elves are forged. Its gates, carved with the runes of Durin's folk, stand closed, a barrier of stone and will. Behind them, Thorin and his company guard the hoard, their hearts hardened by the gold's curse. The treasure is not just wealth, but a wound, a reminder of all they have lost, and Thorin's refusal to share it is not merely greed, but a desperate grasp at legacy, at the restoration of a glory that has long faded. Bard's company makes camp at the edge of Dale within sight of the mountain's gates. They build no fires, for they wish no quarrel, only parley. The elves of Mirkwood arrive soon after their camp, a vision of order and grace, their tents shimmering in the twilight. Thranduil, tall and regal, moves among his people like a star, his presence both a comfort and a challenge. He seeks the white gems of Lasgarland stolen by the dwarves long ago, and his claim is just yet his pride is a mirror to Thorin's own. The master of Lake Town follows his company, larger but less disciplined, their voices loud with demands for gold. He speaks of Lake Town's suffering, of the dragon's fire, of the debt owed to those who bore the cost of Smaug's fall. But his words are laced with ambition, and his eyes betray the truth. He seeks not justice, but power. Bard stands apart, his gaze fixed on the mountain. He feels the weight of the moment, the fragile balance that holds war at bay. He knows that a single spark, a harsh word, a drawn blade could ignite a conflict that would consume them all. Yet he knows too that silence is no answer, for the treasure's curse festers in the heart of Erebor, and it will not be undone by waiting. He must act not as a warrior, but as a voice of reason, a bridge between the pride of kings and the hope of his people. This is the burden he carries, the legacy of Girion of Dale of the Lake that has always borne Esgaroth through the storm. The parley begins at dawn under a sky heavy with clouds. Bard Thranduil and the master approach the gates of Erebor, their companies arrayed behind them. The walls of the mountain loom, their stones scarred by time and fire, yet unyielding. Thorin appears upon the battlements, his crown of iron a stark contrast to the gold that weighs upon his heart. His eyes are fierce, his voice hard, but there is a tremor in it, a crack in the armor of his resolve. He is no villain, but a king wounded by loss, driven by the need to reclaim what was stolen from his people. The hoard is his birthright, his proof that the dwarves of Erebor are not forgotten, and he will not yield it to those he sees as thieves. Thranduil speaks first, his voice like the wind through ancient trees, sharp and unyielding. He demands the return of the white gems, his words a blend of justice and pride. He speaks of the wrongs done to his house, of the beauty stolen by dwarven greed, and his claim carries the weight of centuries. But his tone is cold, his heart closed to compromise, and Thorin's response is a blaze of defiance. He calls the elves faithless hoarders of their own wealth, unworthy of the treasures they seek. The air crackles with tension, the spectre of war drawing closer with every word. The master seizes the moment, his voice loud and opportunistic. He speaks of Lake Town's sacrifice of the homes burned, the lives lost, the debt owed to those who faced Smaug's fire. He demands a share of the hoard, not as charity, but as right, and his words stir the crowd behind him. But his greed is plain, his motives transparent, and Thorin dismisses him with scorn, calling him a merchant of lies, a man unworthy of the gold he craves. The master's face darkens, his ambition curdling into anger, and the rift between the parties widens. Bard steps forward, his presence a quiet contrast to the storm of words. He does not raise his voice, nor does he brandish a weapon. He speaks as a man of the lake, his words plain but heavy with truth. He tells Thorin of Lake Town's suffering, not to demand gold, but to seek understanding. He speaks of the dragon's fire, of the homes lost, of the children who now sleep beneath the open sky. He acknowledges Thorin's loss, the theft of Erebor, the weight of a crown that carries the hopes of a people. And he asks not for wealth, but for peace, a way to heal the wounds of the past, to build a future where men, dwarves and elves can stand together. His words are a thread of light in the gathering dark, a call to the better angels of those who listen. Thranduil's eyes soften, if only for a moment, as he hears the echo of his own grief in Bard's voice. The master shifts uneasily, his ambition checked by the clarity of Bard's purpose, and Thorin high upon the battlements falters. The gold's curse is strong, its whispers loud in his heart, but Bard's words pierce the fog, reminding him of the king he once was, the leader who fought for his people, not for a hoard that brings no joy. Yet the curse is not so easily broken. Thorin's pride reasserts itself, his voice a thunder that shakes the stones. He refuses to yield, declaring the hoard his own, the mountain inviolable. He calls for time to consider the claims, but his words are a delay, a shield against the truth he cannot yet face. The parley ends without agreement, the parties withdrawing to their camps, the air thick with the promise of conflict. The master fumes, his plans thwarted, and he whispers to his followers of war, of taking what is owed. Thranduil prepares his archers, his heart torn between justice and the pride that blinds him. And Bard returns to his company, his heart heavy but unbroken, for he knows the battle is not yet lost. In the days that follow, the camps grow tense, the shadow of the hoard casting a pall over all. Scouts report movement in the mountains, whispers of Thorin's kin marching from the Iron Hills, led by Dain Ironfoot, a warrior of iron will. The elves sharpen their blades, the men of Lake Town clutch their spears, and the air hums with the weight of what may come. Yet Bard does not despair. He moves among his people, speaking of the lake, of the homes they will rebuild, of the future they will shape. He reminds them of who they are, not warriors, not conquerors, but a people of resilience, bound by the water that has always held them fast. In the quiet moments, Bard seeks counsel from an unexpected source. Bilbo Baggins, the hobbit who walked into the dragon's lair and emerged with more than gold. Bilbo, small and unassuming, has slipped from Erebor, his heart troubled by Thorin's madness, his hands bearing a gift that could change the tide, the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain, a jewel that Thorin prizes above all else. Bilbo offers it to Bard and Thranduil not as a weapon, but as a tool for peace, a way to break the stalemate and bring Thorin to reason. His act is one of courage born not of strength, but of compassion, a reminder that the smallest hands can shift the fate of the world. Bard accepts the Arkenstone not with triumph, but with sorrow, for he knows its power and its cost. He holds it in his hands, its light a star in the darkness, and feels the weight of the choice before him. To use the Arkenstone is to wield a weapon of the heart to force Thorin's hand, but it is also to risk betrayal, to deepen the wounds that divide them. He consults with Thranduil, whose eyes gleam at the sight of the jewel, but Bard urges caution, for he seeks not victory, but reconciliation. The Elf King agrees, though his pride chafes, and they resolve to offer the Arkenstone to Thorin, not as a ransom, but as a gesture of good faith, a chance to end the standoff without blood. The second parley is set, the Arkenstone held in Bard's hands as he stands before the gates. Thorin's face is a storm of rage and betrayal when he sees the jewel, his voice a roar that accuses Bilbo of treachery, Bard of theft, Thranduil of deceit. The moment teeters on the edge of violence, the air thick with the clash of wills. But Bard speaks his voice steady, his words a lifeline cast into the chaos. He offers the Arkenstone not for gold, but for peace, asking Thorin to remember the king. He was the leader who fought for his people, not for a jewel that blinds him to their need. For a moment it seems the tide might turn. Thorin's eyes flicker, the shadow of the hoard wavering in the face of Bard's truth. But the curse is deep, its roots tangled in his heart, and he rejects the offer, his voice a blade that cuts the hope from the air. The parley ends, the camps brace for war, and the mountain stands silent, its gates a wall between the past and the future. Bard returns to his people, the Arkenstone still in his hands, his heart heavy with the knowledge that peace may come only through pain. Yet even in this darkness, the spirit of Lake Town shines. The fishermen and craftsmen who stand with Bard do not falter, their eyes fixed on the lake. They will return to the homes they will rebuild. They speak of the dragon's fall, of the arrow that pierced the shadow of the water that held them fast. They are not a people of war, but of endurance, and their presence is a reminder that the true strength lies not in gold, but in the bonds that hold them together. Bard draws strength from them, from their quiet courage, from the memory of his children who wait by the lake, their hope a light that no shadow can quench. As the armies prepare, a new shadow stirs not from the mountain but from the east. Scouts bring word of a host approaching, not of dwarves or elves, but of goblins and wargs, drawn by the chaos, by the promise of plunder. The hoard has called them its curse, a beacon that stirs the darkest corners of the world. The news shifts the air, the threat of war with Thorin overshadowed by a greater peril. Bard sees the truth. The treasure is a flame that burns all who touch it, and the only hope lies in unity, in standing together against the shadow that seeks to consume them all. He sends messengers to Thranduil, to the Master, to Thorin, calling for a truce, for a stand against the coming storm. The lake far behind reflects the gathering clouds, its waters a mirror of the choice that lies before them. The spirit of Lake Town, forged in fire, tempered by loss, rises now to meet this new challenge, a song of resilience that echoes through the ages. For though the hoard may call, though the shadow may grow, the heart of Esgaroth endures, and its light will guide them through the darkness into the final verse of this tale, where the true meaning of their stand is revealed. The air above the long lake lies still heavy with the weight of a gathering storm, as the waters reflect a sky bruised with clouds. Far from the lake, in the shadow of the lonely mountain, Bard and his small company of Lake Town folk stand amidst the ruins of Dale, their eyes turned eastward, where a new shadow stirs. The treasure of Erebor, freed from Smaug's coils, has become a flame that draws not only men, dwarves and elves, but a darker force, goblins and wargs, a host of chaos driven by malice and the lure of plunder. The gates of the mountain remain barred, Thorin Oakenshield's heart hardened by the hoard's curse. Thranduil's elves, proud and unyielding, sharpen their blades, while the Master of Lake Town whispers of gold and power, his ambition a spark in the dry tinder of discord. Yet Bard the Bowman stands as a quiet anchor, his heart fixed on the lake, and the people who wait there, their spirit unbroken by fire or fear. The tale of Lake Town reaches its crescendo, not in triumph or defeat, but in a revelation, a song of hope, sacrifice, and the enduring light that no shadow can extinguish. To understand why Smaug could not crush the spirit of Lake Town, we must walk the final path where the battle for the soul of the North is fought, and the true meaning of resilience is unveiled. The news of the approaching goblin host spreads like wildfire through the camps at Dale. Scouts, breathless and pale, speak of a tide of darkness, thousands of goblins, their eyes glinting with cruelty, their ranks swelled by wargs whose howls chill the blood. They come not for the hoard alone, but for dominion to sweep away all who stand in their path. The fragile stalemate between men, dwarves and elves shatters, replaced by a shared dread that binds them, if only for a moment. Bard seizes this fleeting unity, sending messengers to Thorin Thranduil and the Master, calling for a truce, for a stand against the common foe. The treasure, he knows, is the root of this evil, its curse a beacon that has drawn the shadow to their doorstep. But he also knows that the true strength lies not in gold, but in the hearts of those who choose to stand together. In Lake Town, far to the south, the people feel the shift, though they know not its cause. The lake is restless, its waters rippling without wind, as if sensing the peril that looms over their kin. The fishermen mend their nets with hurried hands, the mothers hold their children close, and the elders gather to pray their voices a soft chant that carries across the water. They speak of Bard of the Arrow that felled the dragon of the lake that held them fast through fire. They do not know of the goblins or the hoard, but they know their bowman, and their trust in him is a light that burns steady in the dark. This is the spirit of Esgaroth, not loud or grand, but deep and enduring, a current that flows beneath the surface unbroken by the storms above. At Dale, the camps buzz with preparation. Thranduil's elves move with graceful precision, their archers forming ranks, their spears gleaming in the pale light. The men of Lake Town, under the master's command, clutch their spears and shields their faces, a mix of fear and resolve. Bard walks among them, his voice calm, his words a reminder of home, of the lake, of the homes they will rebuild, of the children who wait. He does not speak of glory, for he seeks none, but of duty, of the need to protect what is precious. His presence steadies them, a tether to the heart of Esgaroth, and they nod their hands, tightening on their weapons, their spirits lifted by the man who stood against the dragon. Thorin within the mountain wrestles with the curse that clouds his heart. The Arkenstone, revealed by Bilbo's act of courage, lies at the centre of his torment, a jewel that is both his birthright and his chain. Bard's words at the parley plain, but true echo in his mind, a challenge to the king he once was. The news of the goblin host reaches him, carried by a raven, an ancient ally of the dwarves, and it pierces the fog of his pride. He sees dimly at first the truth that Bard has carried all along, that the hoard is a curse, not a crown, and that the true legacy of Erebor lies not in gold, but in the strength of its people. Yet the curse is strong, its whispers loud, and Thorin hesitates, his heart torn between the mountain and the world beyond. As the goblins draw nearer their drums, a distant thunder, a new force arrives. Dain Ironfoot, lord of the Iron Hills, with a host of dwarven warriors clad in steel. Their axes gleam, their banners snap in the wind, and their presence shifts the balance, bolstering the defenders, but also deepening the tension. Dain is loyal to Thorin, his heart untainted by the hoard's curse, but his pride is fierce, and he bristles at the sight of elves and men encamped before the mountain. Bard meets him not as a foe, but as a fellow leader, speaking of the coming battle, of the need for unity. Dain listens, his eyes narrowing, but he nods his respect for the bowman, outweighing his distrust of the others. The battle begins at dusk, under a sky heavy with the threat of rain. The goblins and wargs pour from the eastern hills, a tide of darkness that crashes against the defences of Dale. The elves loose their arrows, a storm of silver that thins the enemy ranks. The dwarves of Dain form a wall of steel, their axes hewing through the goblins like a scythe through wheat. The men of Lake Town, fewer in number, fight with desperate courage, their spears thrusting, their shields raised against the wargs' jaws. Bard is everywhere, his bow singing, his arrows finding their mark. But his true strength lies in his voice, calling out to his people, urging them to hold fast, to remember the lake that waits for them. The battle is chaos, a maelstrom of steel and blood. Yet within it there are moments of light. A fisherman, his hands more accustomed to nets than swords, stands over a wounded elf, shielding him from a warg's claws. An elven archer, her quiver empty, takes up a fallen man's spear and fights on. A dwarven warrior, his axe broken, lifts a goblin's blade and charges into the fray. These are not the acts of heroes, but of ordinary souls bound by a shared purpose, a refusal to let the shadow win. And in these acts, the spirit of Lake Town shines a reflection of the resilience that has always defined them. Thorin watches from the mountain, his heart a battlefield of its own. The sounds of war reach him, the cries of the wounded, the clash of steel, and they stir the king within. Bilbo, ever at his side, speaks softly, his words a mirror to Bard's own reminders of honour, of duty, of the people who fight not for gold, but for life. The Arkenstone glimmers in the torchlight, its beauty a lie that Thorin begins to see through. And then, in a moment of clarity, he makes his choice. He casts aside the crown of gold, takes up his sword, and calls his company to arms. The gates of Erebor open, and Thorin Oakenshield, king under the mountain, joins the battle, his heart freed, if only for a time, from the hoard's curse. The arrival of Thorin and his dwarves turns the tide. Their charge is a thunderbolt, their axes a whirlwind that cleaves through the goblin ranks. Thorin fights at the forefront, his voice a rallying cry that echoes across the field. Bard sees him, their eyes meeting for a moment, and there is no need for words. They are leaders bound by the weight of their people, and in this moment they stand as one. Thranduil too joins the fray, his sword a flash of light, his pride tempered by the sight of men and dwarves fighting for a cause greater than their own.
But the battle is not won easily. The goblins are many, their malice unending, and the defenders are weary, their numbers dwindling. The field is strewn with the fallen men, elves, dwarves, their blood mingling in the earth. Bard's heart aches for each loss, for he knows their names, their families, the homes they will not return to. Yet he fights on his bow, steady his voice, a beacon that guides his people through the dark. The lake, though far, is with them, its waters a memory that holds them fast, a promise that they will endure. As the night deepens, a new force enters the fray, eagles great and golden, their wings a storm that scatters the goblins' ranks. With them comes Beorn, the skin-changer, his form a bear of terrible might, his roars shaking the earth. Their arrival is a gift, a thread of hope woven into the tapestry of fate, and the defenders rally their spirits, lifted by the sight of allies unlooked for. The goblins falter, their lines breaking, and the tide turns, the shadow retreating before the light of unity. The battle ends at dawn, the field silent, but for the cries of the wounded and the soft tread of those who tend them. The goblins and wargs are scattered, their host broken, their malice spent. The defenders stand bloodied but unbowed, their faces a mix of grief and gratitude. Thorin, wounded in the fray, lies among the fallen, his eyes clear, his heart at peace. He speaks to Bilbo, his voice soft, his words a confession of pride and a plea for forgiveness. He speaks of Bard of the Bowman, who saw the truth, and he names him friend, a king indeed, if not in name. And then he is gone, his life a price paid for the redemption of his people.
Bard kneels beside Thorin, his heart heavy with sorrow, but also with hope. The hoard's curse is broken, its flame dimmed by the sacrifice of those who stood against it. The Arkenstone is returned to the mountain, not as a prize, but as a symbol of what was lost and what was gained. Thranduil, his pride softened by the battle, offers aid to Lake Town. His gems a small price for the unity forged in blood. The master, his ambition exposed, fades into the crowd, his voice silenced by the truth of what has been done. The survivors return to their camps, their hearts turned toward home. Bard leads his people back to the lake, their steps slow but steady, their hands carrying the wounded, their voices singing a soft hymn of the water that waits. Lake Town greets them, its stilts creaking, its homes still scarred, but its spirit unbroken. The people gather, their faces alight with relief and love, and they embrace their kin, their tears, a mingling of joy and grief. The lake reflects the dawn, its waters clear, a mirror of the sky that holds no shadow. In the days that follow, Lake Town rebuilds not with gold, but with wood and water, with the hands of those who know its heart. Bard, now named king by his people, leads not from a throne, but from the quay, his bow at his side, his children near. He speaks of Dale, of a city reborn, not as a rival to Erebor, but as a sister, a place where men and dwarves can stand together. The elves of Mirkwood send aid, their healers tending the wounded, their songs a gift to the lake. The dwarves of Erebor under Dain's rule share the hoard's wealth, not as a debt, but as a bond, a promise of a new north. The spirit of Lake Town, forged in fire, tempered in battle, shines now as a beacon. It is not a spirit of conquest, but of endurance,
of the quiet courage that mends nets and sings lullabies, that stands against the shadow and rebuilds in its wake. Smaug could not crush it, for it is born of the lake of the water that flows beneath of the hearts that choose hope over fear, love over greed, life over gold. This is the revelation of Esgaroth's tale, not a resolution, but a song that fades into memory, its notes lingering in the silence, calling us to listen, to carry its truth forward. The lake lies still, its surface a canvas of light, and in its depths the story lives on. The children of Lake Town play along its shores, their laughter a hymn to the future. The fishermen cast their nets, their hands steady, their eyes bright with the promise of tomorrow. And Bard the Bowman stands at the edge of the water, his heart full, his gaze turned to the horizon. The question that began this tale, why could Smaug not crush the spirit of Lake Town, finds its answer here, in the resilience of a people, in the love that binds them, in the light that endures. The song does not end, but carries on a melody of hope that echoes through the ages, a call to stand, to hope, to be the light that no shadow can extinguish.